Hi, welcome to Module 3, Video 2. So in this module, we're going to talk about loops. I want to reiterate that I really feel that this most of the stuff in this chapter, Chapter 3 and Module 2, should be review for you. So this is a time for you to practice and get your skills up. Make sure that you understand what's going on in this chapter, because moving forward, we're going to start to have a lot of new content. So please keep that in mind. So we are talking about loops now. We did enumerated types in the last video, branching and conditions and switch. And now we want to start to talk about loops. So there are three types of loops that you can use: the while loop, do while loop, and for loops. And they have different reasons for using different loops. For a counting loop, you could use any loop. While loops are usually used when your update and your tests are going to be complicated, because for the for loop, everything is in the header of the loop, so you don't really want to have a complicated update and initialization, update, or test in the header of your for loop. Anything that you can do with a for loop, you can do with a while loop, but sometimes while loops are very simple. For like iterating through an array or something, it's very simple to use a for loop. Remember that the loops, for while loops and for loops, test before the loop. A do while loop will test at the end of the loop, and therefore will always go into the block at least one time. Now, some other things you might not be familiar with is auto increment and auto decrement. So if you use num++, which hopefully most of you already used, this will first return num and then add 1 to it. So it'll be num if it's used, and then it will add 1 after. Where here, ++ num is going to add 1 to num first and then return the num. So I've made a little bit of code for you here. And rather than reading this to you right here, I'm going to put it into the compiler. So if any of you are wondering where this code is located, it's right here in Module 3 instructional material. The videos I'm recording right now will go here. The notes, these are flowcharts are here, and these are all the sample code. So I'm putting now the auto increment and decrement into the compiler so we can take a look at it and see what's happening. So starting here, I have num, which has the value 2. They all have the value 2. So I'm going to, this one is going to add 1 to num and then print it onto the screen. So here we're going to, this is going to use num2 in the math, and then after it does the math, it's going to add to num2. And in this case, it's going to add 1 to num3 before doing the math. So let's take a look at it. It's best to run it and see what happens. Remember that num, all the numbers started out with the value of 2. So we start out, num is 2. So we add 1 to num, it becomes 3. Num2 is 2. So remember that we're multiplying by 4. So it took the value of num2, which was 2, multiplying by 2. It took the value of num2, which is 2, multiplied it by 2, so the result became 2 times 2, which is 4, and then it added, and then it changed num2 after. So here, if we can put these side by side, so it's going to take num2, use that in the math, multiply it by 2, so value 2 is going to be a 4. Down here, it's going to take num3 and add the 1 to num3 before doing the math. So sometimes, if you're just using it as your loop iterator, like for I equals 0, I less than 1, I plus plus, or plus I in a for loop, it is not going to make any difference. But depending on if you're using it in a calculation or something, it could make a big difference. So it's important to understand how increment and decrement works. And it works the same way for decrementing, which is subtracting. So this is the example. So here are some things for you to test and try out and try to decide how many times do you think that this loop is going to iterate. So if count starts out as 0, so count is going to be 0. So while count plus plus is less than max, max is 5. So how many times do you think it's going to print this statement onto the screen? It's going to print it once here before the loop, and then how many times do you think it's going to print it inside the loop? So I encourage you to try it and find out and see what happens. All right, and now this is an example of a for loop. This is a very basic for loop that's going to, how many times is this loop going to run? It's going to go from n equals 1 up until n is less than or equal to 10, so it will go 10 times. And so this is just a reminder of how to use a for loop to calculate a sum. And just some tips for designing loops. You can read this. You need to, the most important thing when you're programming is to understand your problem. Understand what it is you're trying to do and write it out either in a flowchart or in pseudocode, in a numerical algorithm, and try to make sure you understand what you're doing before just trying to implement your code. And then you can make a decision about which loop is your best choice. Like I said, you can do everything you can do with a for loop, you can do with a while loop. A do while loop is different because it's going to go into the loop body one time. Input loops, I would usually use a while loop if they require any type of input for your initialization test or update. If you know you're going to do it one time, like play a game or something, that would be a do while loop. Do while loops are also good for forcing correct input because you want to make sure that you're getting the correct input. All right, so I have provided for you here a PowerPoint with flowcharts for loops as a review. So I've just made a flow chart here. Again, I'm assuming this is review, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. If something's not clear, please let me know. So the same shapes. Okay, the syntax for a for loop, you have your initialization, your testing, and your update all in the header of the for loop. And inside the body will be all the statements that are to be repeated as long as the Boolean expression or the test is true. A while loop, you initialize before the loop. You test. Your Boolean test is in the parentheses. And then somewhere inside of the loop body, you need to make sure that you update. A do while loop, you may or may not need to initialize. It depends on what you're testing. And it's going to do it one time and then test at the end. And don't forget to add the semicolon at the end of the while loop. And here's just a couple examples. Here's an example of a counting loop, which is a for loop. Here's an example of a counting loop, which is a while loop. If you notice, the initialization is before the loop. The I is the iterator. And it's updated inside the loop body. And do while loop, counting loop example. And a conditional loop. This is using a while loop to ensure that the input you're getting from the user is not a negative number. So if you want to force and make sure that you get a positive number, you can use a while loop for that. A do while would also work in this case. All right, so I hope that this is a good review on loops. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and let me know. And take this time to review, go through, look at the sample code, practice, and be sure that you understand all of the content from this module, loops and conditions. Read the notes, read the chapter, look at the chapter slides. I have selected from the chapter the content that is important. And these are my own notes. I gave you some flowcharts, and please test the sample code, practice, and get ready for the next module, which is module 4, where we're going to start to talk about and review functions and pass by value and pass by reference.